My husband left me for his soulmate, now he's broke, she's pregnant, and he's using our daughter against me. I'm 38, and my husband, well, soon-to-be ex, is also 38. We got married in 2009 and have a preteen daughter. The last 3 years have been brutal, mostly because of his terrible work conditions, which took a serious toll on his mental health. I could see the signs: burnout, depression, the works, and I brought it up to him constantly. Every time, he shut me down, refused to acknowledge what was happening, and absolutely refused to consider therapy. As time went on, he became more and more distant, isolating himself from us. He barely engaged with our daughter, and when he did, they were always clashing. Then one day, he sat me down and told me he'd met someone at work. He insisted nothing physical had happened, but he was in love with her. According to him, she was his soulmate, his best friend. He apologized, but then he hit me with, "I don't know who I'd be happiest with." That was the moment my world shattered. While I was struggling to hold everything together, he was openly debating whether he should leave me for another woman. I spent my nights crying alone, mourning all the dreams and plans we had built together. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he told me he needed space to clear his head, and conveniently, this coworker had already offered him a spare room. He was going to take her up on it. Before he left, I asked him to help sort out our daughter's school schedule, since I had a long commute for work. I told him I'd start looking for an apartment closer to my job, and as soon as the school year was over, I'd move out with our daughter. That way, he could have the house to himself to heal or whatever he needed to do. But things moved faster than I expected. I found an apartment almost immediately, and we left. After that, he would visit us once a month for a weekend, but every single time, he brought nothing but chaos. Our new home had become a sanctuary for me and our daughter, a place where we finally felt safe. But whenever he showed up, that peace disappeared, like I couldn't breathe again until he was gone. After 6 months of living in this mess, I realized I'd given him more than enough time to figure things out. Nothing had changed. I was still hurt and resentful, and he was still avoiding any real accountability. He couldn't even give me a straight answer about where we stood. So I told him I was done. I wanted a divorce. That's when he completely lost it. He stormed out, got in his car, and drove back to our old house in the middle of the night just to get away from me. A week later, he called to tell me his coworker was pregnant. And somehow, in his mind, that was my fault too. He was furious that I didn't want to try to fix our marriage. Since then, his behavior has only gotten worse. He's more hostile, more accusatory in every conversation. He blames me for breaking up the marriage, insists that I abandoned him when he was struggling. He claims he wasn't himself and doesn't understand why he did what he did, but according to him, I was the one who left. He says I didn't support him and had already checked out of the relationship years before. He calls me cold, calculating, and says I'm not the woman he thought he married. I know he's not in a good place mentally. He did eventually start therapy, and for a while, I tried to give him some grace, keeping that in mind. But now he's accusing me of taking our daughter away from him and leaving, as if I had any other choice. Update 1. I've been reading all the comments from my original post, and I just want to say thank you. I tried to answer as many questions as I could, but I also wanted to share an update and let you all know how much your advice, tough love, and support have meant to me. Some of it was hard to hear, but I needed it. The divorce is moving forward, and I haven't seen him in person for about 4 months now. Most of the time, he stays completely silent until he suddenly needs to unload his feelings on me. I've kept my contact with him to a minimum, only reaching out when it's about our daughter or something practical, like getting him to respond to official paperwork or reminding him about his electricity bill, which I transferred to his name. At the start of our separation, I was the one covering most of his living expenses. I have a stable job and make double what he does, and since he was struggling with his mental health, I wanted to at least ease some of the financial burden. But now that we're officially untangling our lives, he's dragging his feet at every step, making the process as slow and frustrating as possible. Right now, I'm still technically paying for his electricity, and he's supposed to reimburse me at the end of each month. Sometimes, I have to remind him. And whenever I do, he starts messaging me all day, ranting about how I've made him obsolete as a father. He tells me to go find a new dad to help me raise our daughter. He throws out jabs like, "It must be so hard for you to send your daughter to someone you loathe so much." If I ever slip up and lose my temper even for a single curse word, he immediately flips it around. Suddenly, I'm the one who needs to calm down and stop spitting acid. He'll say we should continue this conversation when I'm not so wound up. It's all just another way to push my buttons, and I've learned not to engage. Whenever things start spiraling, I just stop responding. Luckily, I have every single one of his outbursts saved in writing. As for his coworker, from what I've gathered, she's not interested in being with him anymore. And yes, for everyone asking, he says the baby is his. But he still hasn't told our daughter anything about it. I finally gave him an ultimatum. We have an official meeting with a child welfare officer next month. If he doesn't tell our daughter the truth by then, I will. So many of you encouraged me to do this, for her sake and for the sake of our relationship, and I truly appreciate your advice. I've also reached out to her school therapist and a curator to let them know what's been going on, both the challenges she's facing now and the ones still ahead. She's not the kind of kid who easily opens up, even to me, so I'm hoping they'll be able to provide her with some scheduled support. Thank you again to everyone who took the time to read, comment, and share your thoughts. Your words have helped more than you know. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. It's been months since my original post, and I wanted to check in. The kindness, advice, and even the tough love I got from this community helped me more than I can express. I took a lot of it to heart, made real progress for myself and my daughter, and finally cut the last of the financial ties between me and my ex. I stopped paying his bills and finalized agreements on child support and custody. For now, custody is still technically shared, but only because he backtracked on his promise to give it to me uncontested. When it came time to sign an official visitation agreement, he refused, said he can't commit to a schedule right now. I offered him every other weekend and half of all holidays, but he wouldn't put it in writing. The upside? He's actually started seeing our daughter more. She visits him on her own terms now, and their relationship seems to be improving. That makes me happy, at least. His treatment of me, though? That's another story. After I asked him to be civil, he launched a full-scale campaign of passive-aggressive texting. Now, every message is too nice, syrupy sweet, full of over-the-top apologies. I ignored it at first, but when we had to meet in person to sign paperwork, he decided to speak his mind. He claimed his therapist told him to have this conversation for closure. What followed was another round of him explaining how hard the last year has been for him, how I tore our marriage apart, how he will never accept this divorce. Nothing in his life is what he wanted, he says. He even found it insulting when I congratulated him on the baby. The whole thing felt so off, especially considering he just moved in with his affair partner. He actually tried to keep that a secret, too. He was evasive about where he was living, but of course, our daughter figured it out when she visited and told me. I know it's pointless to argue, but I couldn't just sit there and take it. I told him that through this entire process, he has completely ignored my pain. He never acknowledged how much mental and emotional work I had to do just to survive this. And whether he likes it or not, my love for him died in the process. His response? You didn't even try. Then he actually had the nerve to say that even my parents were more supportive of him than I was, just because they exchanged pleasantries when they happened to cross paths a few weeks ago. He even threw in that his co-workers were more supportive than me. I finally snapped. I told him to take a long, hard look in the mirror because his passive-aggressive act was beyond obvious. And that must have hit home because, for once, he actually shut up. Now he's been snooping on my dating life through our daughter, which is just pathetic. He straight up admitted he's jealous, and whenever he brings it up, he gets verbally aggressive. What brought me back here tonight? 4 months, life has been so much better. My daughter and I are happier than we've been in years. But today, I fell into an unexpected hole. This was supposed to be his weekend with her, but he cancelled. The reason he gave me was different from what he told her, which means he lied to someone. I brushed it off at first. But then, yesterday, he blew up on me over text. What started as a conversation about our daughter's visits quickly spiraled into the same old song and dance. According to him, I'm still being petty over such a minor thing as his affair, though, of course, he insists it wasn't even a real affair in the first place. Then he took it even lower. He actually wrote, "Even your parents were right about you being too sensitive." That one stung. He knows how much I've struggled with my relationship with them, how they'd used "you're too sensitive" to dismiss me my whole life. And for years, he was the one who validated my feelings, the one who told me I wasn't imagining things. Now, he's weaponizing my biggest wound against me. I called him out, told him how disgusting it was to throw that in my face. And that's when he really lost it. His messages turned into a full-blown meltdown, and I had to stop reading them, because I knew if I did, I'd end up crying at my desk at work. Then, this morning, our daughter came running to me, crying happy tears, jumping up and down. Her dad had sent her pictures of her brand new baby sister. I hugged her tight and told her how wonderful it was that she was now an official big sister. We looked at the pictures together, gushing over how tiny the baby was. But all day, my mood has been awful. My family has been texting me, checking in, because of course, my daughter told everyone, and that's completely okay. I just didn't expect this wave of emotions to hit me so hard. I know we're better off. I know I'm stronger. But today reminded me that healing isn't always a straight line. Lately, I've been feeling exhausted and more irritable than usual. It hit me all at once, the overwhelming realization that I don't really have anyone to talk to. No one truly unbiased, no one I can just sit down with and spill my heart to. That's been the hardest part of all this. When my marriage fell apart, I didn't just lose a husband, I lost the person who used to be my best friend. And now, every time I feel like I really need to open up, I'm reminded of just how alone I am. Is that a normal reaction? I thought I had moved on, that I had shut myself off emotionally from him for so long that nothing he did could really touch me anymore. But somehow, the birth of this baby sent me into a complete downward spiral. Today, I hit a low I haven't felt in a long time, and I needed to get it all out. So, if you're still reading, thank you. Update 3. Hello, dear Redditors. Red Heart. It's been a while since I last updated, but since a few of you have reached out, I thought I'd check in. Honestly, at this point, I feel like the title of my original post doesn't even fit anymore. I've realized my own errors in all of this. But I'll leave it as is for clarity's sake. First, to everyone who has offered advice, support, or just a virtual hug, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you. My original post and updates are still on my profile, so if you're just catching up, you can find them there. Last time I posted, I was struggling with a setback. The birth of my daughter's little sister hit me harder than I expected. But my daughter? She has been absolutely over the moon about her, and she loves her dearly. More than anything, I hope she and her sister get to keep a strong relationship, no matter what happens with their father. Aside from that, life has been good. Really good. I finally saved up enough money to buy us an apartment, and I've been busy renovating it. Work is going great. I actually got a promotion, which helped me land the apartment in the first place. My siblings and friends have been my rock throughout this whole journey, and I truly don't know where I'd be without them. As for my love life, I have no real urge to find a new partner right now. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm still too jaded, too harsh when it comes to love. I don't like feeling that way, but I know it's just another thing that will heal in time. Of course, none of this sits well with my ex. I know this because I get to hear about it, through our daughter, of course. He found out about my promotion, about the new apartment, and it's eating away at him. He even messaged me to say it feels like I was held back by him and that his absence has allowed me to thrive. Well, yeah. Where my ex stands now. As for him, he's not doing well. Of course, all I know is what he tells me and what my daughter mentions in passing, but from the sound of it, things are far from ideal. We recently had to renegotiate child support because the original agreement had a fixed time period. During the hearing, I got a very clear picture of how his life is going. Turns out, the new woman of the house isn't playing around. She has him covering all the household expenses, utilities, groceries, repairs, while she just pays the mortgage. I have to admit, I was impressed. He complained during the hearing that he barely has enough money left to afford therapy. Then, when it was revealed that our original child support calculation was incorrect and the state had covered for him, he spiraled. He was already struggling with the amount he owed, and hearing that he now had to pay more sent him into complete despair. Right after the hearing, he started messaging me nonstop. He implied that he can't afford therapy anymore, that I should understand he's the only breadwinner in the house now. And then he actually said he wouldn't be able to take our daughter as often because, and I quote, she eats like a horse, and I can't afford it. I reminded him that she eats just as much on the other 26 days of the month when she's with me. This summer, he agreed to take her for a few weeks during his holiday. The only reason? I agreed to waive child support for that month. The whole situation is just sad. And it's only getting worse. The last straw. A few weeks ago, my daughter was spending time at his place when things really came to a head. He had already tried to pick a fight with me days prior, but I refused to engage. So what did he do? He stormed off and ignored my last message for 3 full days, classic silent treatment. That's how he used to punish me when we were together, too. I knew exactly what was coming. Sure enough, once he had stewed on it long enough, he blew up my phone with messages. One after another, twisting everything I had said into some warped version where I was the villain. I refused to take the bait. I told him this wasn't my problem anymore, and he needed to find someone else to argue with. That sent him into a rage. He completely changed tactics and hit me with, well, I showed our daughter these messages so she can see for herself that you're not as nice as you pretend to be. That took me from zero to furious in an instant. Not because of what he was trying to imply about me, but because he had the audacity to drag our daughter into this. I told him, flat out, that this was the most selfish, immature thing he could have done. that he was actively harming his own child with this behavior. And from that moment on, I was done. I told him that from now on, I would not be engaging with him about anything except matters directly related to our daughter. No more arguing. No more back and forth. No more games. And just like that, his entire personality shifted. Suddenly, he was whining, playing the victim. Why are you being so mean to me? Then he started throwing out "I still love you" and other weird attempts at manipulation. I didn't respond. I won't respond. I'm done. Where I am now. I still have bad days. I still have moments where I feel the deep loneliness creeping in, where I wish I had someone to talk to who truly understands. But I also know that I'm stronger now. I have built a new life for myself and my daughter, and it's a good one. I don't need to look back. And most importantly, I will never, ever let him pull me back into his mess again. The last message he sent me was his attempt at backtracking, claiming that he hadn't shown our daughter any of my messages after all, that my sanctity was intact. But by then, I already knew better. Still, something in my gut wouldn't let it go. I felt unsettled, like I needed to see my daughter in person, to check on her myself. So the next day, I went to pick her up. I figured if I had her alone in the car, maybe I could get her to open up about anything he might have been saying. We stopped for some ice cream, and as we sat there, she looked up at me, her voice small and hesitant, and said, "Please don't take me away from Dad." My heart nearly stopped. I asked her, gently, why she thought that. And that's when she told me her father had been talking to her about our custody issues, framing it like I was trying to take her away from him completely. Mommy wants full custody. I reassured her that even if I had full custody, it wouldn't mean she couldn't see her dad. Visitation would still be there as long as it was good for her. She looked relieved but still worried, and then she said she wanted him to be there for her school graduation. I told her, of course, sweetie. He has every right to be there, all you have to do is invite him. And this is where I know reality will speak for itself. I've invited him to every birthday party she's had. He never comes. I didn't tell her that, of course. Instead, I made sure she knew that I fully support her having a relationship with him. And by putting the ball in her court, by having her invite him, he will now have to make his excuses directly to her. It kills me that this has turned into a battle, but I don't see another choice. A few days later, she came to me again. This time, she asked, "Why are you so mean to Daddy?" I stayed calm and asked her what made her think that. And that's when she told me her father had shown her my messages. So, his last message to me? Another lie. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just manipulation. This was parental alienation. And more than that, this was emotional abuse. Taking action. I called CPS to ask for advice, whether I should file an official complaint against him and what that process would look like. My daughter has already been seeing the school counselor, and now that she's starting at a new school, I plan to get her the same kind of support there. I want professionals to assess her and, if needed, refer her to therapy. The CPS worker I spoke to told me that if I filed a complaint, it would go on record. They said they encouraged me to file but wanted me to be aware of what could follow. If I did, both my ex and I would be required to go through separate sessions for evaluation. They would determine whether the situation was severe enough to intervene. They also warned me of the possible outcomes. 1. Best case? He finally takes this seriously, because someone outside of me is calling him out. 2. Worst case? He lashes out, making communication even worse and possibly retaliating. And knowing him? He's going to choose the latter. The worker advised me that if I collect more evidence of him manipulating our daughter, I should file without hesitation. Luckily, all of our communication is in writing. I've saved every word. Now, I'm left trying to decide what's worse. Asterisk the trauma my daughter might experience if she's cut off from her father and little sister. Asterisk or the trauma of being constantly manipulated and used as a pawn in a fight she never asked to be a part of. Either way, I know that, in the end, she'll probably blame me. And maybe that's what I deserve for failing to protect her from this in the first place. To those who say I should just tell her everything. I know some people think I should stop shielding my ex and just tell my daughter the full, unfiltered truth. But here's the thing, I was never trying to protect him. I was trying to protect her. She never should have been put in this position, but here we are. And to make things worse, my ex actually mocked me once for thinking we could ever co-parent peacefully. You really thought people could do that? Well, I sure can't. And the sad part? He was right. Because co-parenting only works when both parents are mature enough to put their child first. And I can't do it alone. My daughter sees more than I give her credit for. She knows her father had a baby with another woman. She even says it in those exact words. But at the same time, she's being fed this twisted version of events, one where I checked out of our marriage long before it ended, or all he needed was love and I turned my back on him. According to him, I abandoned him, just like I abandoned my own parents, because I just couldn't get over things like every other adult on the planet supposedly can. She's hearing all of this. And yet, she still talks to me. Which tells me she knows something isn't adding up. Where I stand now. So, here we are. The good, the bad, and the bats hit insane. All I can do now is try to make the right choices for my daughter. Try to ensure that, no matter what happens, she grows up into a healthy, happy adult. And if one day she comes to me and asks why I did what I did, I will be ready for that conversation. Thank you, truly, to everyone who has listened, supported me, and even called me out when I needed it. Your words have helped me more than you know.